We can either build a business that we work for, or we can build a business that works for us. And my approach is all about building a business that works for us, because if we're building a business that we work for, we might as well go back to our 9-to-5 job, right? Like we just need to earn money. But if we're building a business that works for us, it's got such a bigger purpose, a bigger meaning to it. And that really is what's going to allow us to live the life that we ultimately want.
Welcome to the Bold Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Jen Kinnell, and this is a space where bold moves meet inspired action. Join us as we dive into stories, strategies, and mindset of those who are building their dreams, creating impactful communities, and redefining success on their terms. Whether you're looking for practical business tips, a boost of inspiration, or a community that gets your vision, you are in the right place. Get ready to elevate your journey and embrace what it means to be a bold founder. Let's dive in. Hey friends, and welcome back to the Bold Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Jen Kinnell, and today I'm really excited about our guest and this conversation because I know it's going to resonate with so many of us who are building businesses and really craving more freedom, ease, and alignment, which is like right up my alley nowadays. So I'm joined by my guest whose journey is full of wisdom and grounded inspiration, Sophie Biggerstaff. Sophie is an online business mentor, e-commerce founder, mental health advocate, and full-time digital nomad. After spending 13 years working for some of the world's biggest fashion trends, she's walked away from burnout and pressure to build a business rooted in freedom, alignment, and impact. She now helps purpose-driven entrepreneurs launch and grow businesses that support the lifestyle they want to live without sacrificing their well-being. Sophie also runs a mental health marketplace, supporting founders and hosts and the Remote CEO Life podcast. This episode is all about unlearning about the hustle, something that I know many of us are still doing and unlearning ourselves. And she's just going to bring such a refreshing and honest perspective to what it means to run a business that actually works for your life. So I'm really excited to have you here and to dive into this conversation. I feel like I'm like knee deep in unlearning all the hustle culture and really bringing in that ease, the systems. And I love the talk of like travel, digital nomad. I feel like we all need so much more of that in our lives.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. And that was a great introduction. I'm really excited to have the conversation with you. And we can delve into all of those things.
I know. There's a lot. I can't wait. Okay, can you bring us back to the moment you decided to leave your career in fashion? And what did that shift really look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was just before the pandemic, which we didn't know was obviously about to happen. And if I'm honest, I'd had these thoughts. I was a fashion buyer. I worked for some of the world's biggest fashion brands. And I was managing a £380 million business, quite a big team. And I was just miserable, like completely miserable. I was waking up every day with anxiety. I was having loads of problems with the team that I was managing because there were so many office politics. And I was like, what am I doing? Like this just is not okay. Like I'm waking up, dreading going to work every day. Every Sunday feels hard to get myself back up for Monday morning. I'm just not willing to do this to my life anymore. And I'd already been traveling, like backtrack about 10 years, I'd been traveling. I'd quit my first job to go traveling. So I knew that travel was always in the pipeline for me. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to quit my job. I've got enough money saved up at this point. I can quit. I could be off for 6 to 8 months and I'd be comfortable. So I quit with the intention to go traveling. And it was so interesting because I put my handed in my notice and my boss actually stopped talking to me because I was kind of his pipeline dream. I was the person that was going to take over him, and like he thought that I wanted to work my way up the company in the classic career ladder moves as you do, as he had done. And he stopped talking to me, and he was like, he just couldn't get his head around the fact that I wanted a different version of success than he had. And he didn't understand this whole travel thing. He'd never really left his career to go and travel or anything like that. So for me to do that, it was like a disgrace basically in the office. So my last few weeks at work were interesting. And then obviously we went into the pandemic, and the pandemic and lockdown happened in the UK literally 7 days before my end date at the company. So I had already quit back in the January, went into lockdown in the March, I think it was. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because all the flights are not going anymore. Like I can't go traveling, all of these plans that I've made. So I actually ended up just kind of not forced, but pushed into starting a business. And it was definitely a long time coming because I'd had thoughts for many years before that about potentially quitting. But honestly, every time I thought about it, I was like, maybe I just need to change jobs. Maybe it would be fine if I just changed company. So I would always switch jobs. So I probably first realized that I needed to leave the fashion industry about 5 years before I actually did. But obviously fear overtakes, right, sometimes, and that was all I knew. That was my identity. So I ended up staying in it until 2020, and then I walked away, and I will never look back.
That's amazing. I like the pandemic completely changed my business, also completely shifted everything. And I think it's such a hard thing to go through because, like, obviously, like you said, you have major plans to travel. You had a money bank that allowed you to like be able to have those 8 months. The pandemic went longer than that. And so, like, or like all the shutdowns. And so you really were like, okay, you've gotten rid of your safety net of your business or you're working for that company. And I just love looking back now and thinking that was like your push. That was what made you get to where you what you wanted and reevaluate what was important. And so I just think that's super, super cool. And I also wanted to touch on the fact that your old boss just wouldn't speak to you because you didn't you didn't have his like what he deemed was successful. You had changed your mind and it didn't align anymore. And so I just think that's also really powerful to talk about because I've had a lot of conversations on this podcast lately about what is success. What does that look like to you? Does that mean climbing the corporate ladder? Or maybe that means being able to like travel and see the world, but still make money and have your freedom. Like for me, freedom is key. It's so, so important.
Yeah, absolutely. When I experienced that, that was my knowing that I was doing the right thing, right? Like the
Mhm.
fact that I already knew that the boss was playing some games, there was some manipulation tactics, and in all honesty, I had to play up to them because it was better to have them on my side than against me. So I always felt like I had this mask on when I was in my corporate career. I always felt like I had to play games. And there is a stereotype around the fashion industry. If we think about Devil's Wears Prada, for example, there is an element of truth
Yeah.
to that. That didn't come out of nowhere. There is a lot of competition. There is a lot of games that are played and a lot of corporate politics. And I did feel like I had to act up to that circumstance. So when I was ignored for a couple of months, basically, it's kind of hilarious because I would obviously be sat in my team and the boss would walk over and he would talk to the person literally sitting next to me, but he wouldn't talk to me. He'd be like, oh, can you tell Sophie to do X, Y, Z, whatever it would be? Or like have a conversation with her and let me listen in, but never directly give me the instruction. And then it wasn't until maybe like 2 or 3 days before I left that he was like, oh, so what's next for you? And like started talking to me again. I was like, you've not spoken to me for a good like 2 months at this point.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just a very, very toxic situation. But again, it gave me the reassurance that I was doing the right thing. And yeah, exactly. Everybody's version of success looks different. And in his mind, climbing the corporate ladder was success. And for a while, that was also my version of success because I didn't know any different. And it wasn't like I never really thought of myself as going to be an entrepreneur. I didn't think I could start a business. I had no idea how to start a business or what business I could start. So my version of success was never going to be, oh, let's go and be an entrepreneur. So all I knew back then was to just climb the corporate ladder, get the next stage up in the buying career. But I also knew that I didn't really want that. So in all honesty, I think at the time of me starting my business and leaving that corporate career, I didn't know what my version of success was. And I think I've had to live through loads of different experiences to now realize I've got a taste of this freedom life that I've created for myself. This is my version of success. This is now where I can see I can see the path so clearly of what I want for my life now, but I had to experience it and be expanded into
Yeah.
that world before I knew that it could be possible for me.
Yeah. And I do think that it's a little bit of a gift when you have somebody who is like that with you, who is ignoring you and treating you that way in a way like one, it pushes you out, but also I've had clients where I'm like, this is like they're so demanding and high maintenance and or like the way they speak to you and you're like, okay, this is not how I want to be. This is how I'm going to build my business. So that's like a gift to see. One, you want to see like what's possible and what's available to you. So it's great to see those things, but it's also great to see the other side of it where you're like, I'm not going to take a client like that anymore, or I'm not going to put up with that kind of behavior anymore. And I will never do that behavior to anyone else because you've been on the other side of it. So I think everything we go through in life is a complete learning curve for us, but also really good lessons on what we want and what we don't want.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think everything is a lesson, right? We're always learning continuously. It's never going to stop. And I agree. I learned how not to manage people from many of my bosses. I learned how I didn't want to live and like the values that I didn't want to adhere to from many of my corporate experiences. And that's not to say they're all bad. I had some really good positive experiences as well.
Yep.
But unfortunately, there were negative moments. And I learned from those negative moments exactly how I was not going to act, how I was not going to be, and how I wanted to live my life going forward.
Yeah, and I like to bring that up because I feel like that doesn't get talked about that often, but it is those little nudges that we get that really do shape who we are. Is there someone or like a person you were following that we were like, oh, I love her lifestyle. This is what I want to create? Or you honestly like were just completely trial and error because you were thrown into it?
I think it was pure trial and error, honestly, because I actually don't really use social media for my own personal use. Like, I actually only really started using social media because of business. And even now, I have a massive resistance to it. So I don't think I ever really followed anyone that I was like, oh, I really like her lifestyle. But I've always traveled. I went traveling when I was 21, and I'd quit my first job. I was working for Ralph Lauren. I was a buying admin assistant. And I was like, I've never been to university. I've never had any life experience. I need to go and get some life experience. So I quit my first job to go traveling. And I was away for like 6 or 7 months. And that was my first kind of expansion into the world of travel. And I knew immediately, as soon as I left the UK, I was always going to have this itchy travel bug. And I never really stopped traveling, to be honest, since then. And I think that was my first time of like being like, I really want to live abroad. I really want to experience other cultures and do all of these different travel experiences. But I managed to work my way into that world through work because all of my work opportunities allowed me to travel. When I was working for Kate Spade, I was back and forth from London to New York. When I was working for Burberry, I was all over Europe. So, and when I was working for Diesel, I lived in Italy for that. So I kind of got my little travel fixes through my jobs, but then there came a point where I was like, well, I want more. Like, I want to live
Yeah.
there. I want to, and I don't want to be doing this job anymore. Like, what can I do? And in all honesty, I didn't know what I could do. So there wasn't necessarily someone that inspired me. I think I inspired almost myself through some of the experiences that I'd had. And I remember going to Bali on holiday in 2017, I think it was. And there were all these people working on their laptops. And I was like, hold on a minute, like in the middle of the day, what are you doing living in Bali? Like working on a laptop, going to yoga on your lunch break? Like, I'm so confused. What on earth are they doing? In my head, I just thought, oh, they must be English teachers. That's the only way you can live abroad. So I then went, at the time I went to my ex-boyfriend and I said, should we train to be English teachers so that we could come and do this? Like, I just assumed that was the only way you could do it. And obviously then that was my first kind of like inspiration into that world. And it was actually, I had a friend that was living in Bali and she kind of introduced me to the whole world of digital nomad life. And I was like, I want that. I don't know how I'm going to get it, but I want it. And then ever since then, I've
Wow.
just kind of set myself up for it. And a few years later, managed to achieve it.
Amazing. Okay, I want to go back to the topic of burnout a little bit because I think a lot of entrepreneurs really struggle with this. And usually they struggle with it silently. Like they've got this front that is everything's okay and we're all good. But internally, you're like completely burnt out. And this is something that I'm definitely going through this year where it's just like I'm completely taking away the hustle culture and going into like more ease, simplicity, more systems, and just like setting myself up. Like I already have the freedom to be able to travel and do all those things, but I would much rather like set it up even further so that I can have more freedom and more travel time. And because I'm like you, travel is like my favorite thing in the world. I just absolutely love it. So, what were some of the signs that kind of let you know that you were burnt out and it was time for that change?
I've burnt out many times, so it took me a long time to actually realize the signs. Because I grew up in hustle culture, right? Like, and the industry that I was in, if you didn't hustle, you didn't have a job. So I kind of was trained to work hard and at any cost. Like I wasn't in a 9 to 5. I was in a 9 till whenever you're finished your work, which could have been 10, 11 p.m. So it was. I was conditioned to work hard, to work to no end and not really rest. I wasn't allowed a lunch break because we had so much to do, had deadlines to hit, and everything was urgent. So I didn't really understand the signs of burnout until probably 3 years ago, I think, and I had the worst burnout I've experienced. It was actually when I moved to Bali. I moved to Bali And I was still trying to work and operate in that way. I'd already had 2 burnouts back in the UK before I'd moved to Bali, and I still hadn't learned my lesson. And I then moved to Bali, and obviously I'm on an island. It's a much slower pace of life, but there's me trying to go 100 million miles an hour, like London speed, on an island in Indonesia. Doesn't really work. And at the same time, I got COVID. I was knocked out for about 12 weeks, like really couldn't do anything. Like my energy levels were so low. And actually, I remember like a week or two before I fully burnt out, a friend said to me, she was like, you can't keep going at the speed you're going at. Like, I can see you need to slow down. And I was like, no, I don't. I'm fine. Leave me alone. I'm okay. But if I look back now, I had memory loss. I had really low energy. I had zero boundaries. I was just saying yes to everything and just feeling like exhausted at the end of the day, but feeling like, oh, that's normal. Like, it's okay. My skin was breaking out. My hair was falling out. I was having spots. Like, all of the things, the symptoms my body was showing me, but I chose to ignore them. And it wasn't until that burnout where I really was very, very, very unwell. I was like, I can't live like that. I've got to make a change. So I ended up taking about 5 or 6 months off my business. Like, I was still maintaining the clients that I had, but I wasn't taking on anyone new. I wasn't marketing myself. And I just had to stop. I just had to stop because it had got too extreme. I'd reached kind of like the lowest burnout point. And I now am such a big advocate of talking about the signs, because if I look back, there were signs, but I ignored them all. And I really want to stop that from happening, because ultimately prevention is cure when it comes to things like that. It takes so much longer to recover from a burnout when you've already had it rather than prevent it. So I'm really passionate about talking about like how you can prevent it and what kind of lifestyle changes you need to make in order for that not to happen to you.
Yeah, and I really love that you do bring that up, because we do have those signs, and I've experienced them also, where you're like, no, I'm still good. If I can just get to here, if I can just get to here, then I can relax. And we just push so hard, and it takes a long time for that burnout to like really build itself into your system, but it also takes way longer to get rid of it. And so I think you're right, prevention is key. One of the things I also want to talk about, because we talked a little bit about like, okay, you knew you wanted to travel, you knew you wanted to like live that digital nomad life, and you had to kind of figure out what that is. But I love talking about how we can build our businesses by design so that we can like get to the lifestyle we want through our businesses. Can you talk me through your freedom model method and how it really helps people to build with more clarity and intention?
Yeah, absolutely. So the freedom model method is something that I've designed based on my own challenges. So like I say, I built a business on London time. I didn't build a business on island time. So when I moved and started traveling and nomading, that business that I built in London no longer aligned for the lifestyle that I currently had. But yeah, I was trying to force it to happen. And what I've realized over the past, I've been traveling now for 4 years. I currently live in Thailand. I've lived all over the world and like in different time zones, working with different people. And I've realized it's not sustainable to run my business in the way that I was running it when I first set it up, now in the lifestyle that I've got. So I've had to test out so many different business models to make them align with the lifestyle that I want, because I've seen the lifestyle that I want. I know what lifestyle I want, which I currently have, but I didn't have that before because my business wouldn't allow me to have it. So now I'm all about exactly what you said, designing your business, designing your life, and designing the business around the lifestyle that you want to live. And the first step of that is clarity. You have to understand exactly what you want and why you want it for you to be able to take the steps to get it. Once you've got that clarity, you need to figure out the alignment stage. When you've got that alignment, it's kind of like, well, what do I love to do? What are my biggest skill sets? What is my why, for example? Because if you've got that everything in alignment and it feels really good and easy for you to run your business, let's say you've got 80% of the things that you love doing in your business, obviously there's always going to be a little 20% that we don't like doing. But if you can have 80% of the things that happen in your business, things that you love to do, the things that you feel like you're really good at, that means you're going to feel really in alignment. And it always really comes down to like your values and the things that make you feel like your most authentic business running self. So you've got the clarity, you've got the alignment on what's going to help you get that clarity. And then it's all about taking the action, because ultimately, if we don't take the action, nothing's going to happen. So taking that strategic action based on the clarity and the alignment that we've put in place to actually get us moving forward. So thinking about the goal that we have and looking at working backwards from that and looking at all the steps that we need to do to take there. So that's kind of like the freedom model method, the three-prong approach: clarity, alignment, and taking action.
I really like that you're not just saying this is like here's the course, this is what you do, and go ahead and do it. I love how you're really rooting every single step in like, okay, what do you love? Because we can't just say, well, this is really successful, so then I'm going to do what that person did because it's working. Because if you don't love it, you're going to be like, I don't want to do it anymore. So really rooting it in what you love, and then also really getting clear on what you want your life to be like. Like I also really like the fact that you said like, okay, it was trial and error. You built this business on like London time, but then when you're on an island, it didn't work. So really deciding, okay, yeah, this is what I built to be this amazing business for me. But sometimes our businesses need to shift and mold as our life molds, and then we can adjust it. And I think it's just such a beautiful thing that we can create what we want in our life. We just have to be willing to do a little trial and error and figure it out, right? And so I just love how this method really like allows you to build it exactly the way you want it, but also be forgiving and saying, well, that didn't really work. I'm going to try this instead.
Definitely. I think we can either, and I heard this on a Jenna Kutcher podcast once, it was like, we can either build a business that we work for, or we can build a business that works for us. And my approach is all about building a business that works for us, because if we're building a business that we work for, we might as well go back to our 9 to 5 job, right? Like we just need to earn money. But if we're building a business that works for us, it's got such a bigger purpose, a bigger meaning to it. And that really is what's going to allow us to live the life that we ultimately want. We spend 80% of our lives working. Like, why are we making that a miserable place for ourselves? We might as well try and do something we love, do something that we're good at, and make it feel like a really fun place to show up to every single day when we want to work, and then allow ourselves to actually live at the same time.
Okay, I agree entirely. I think it's just exactly how businesses should be built from the beginning, and sometimes we don't realize that that's even a possibility. So I love that we're discussing it and opening this up to other people to like look at their own business and be like, oh, well, how can I shift my business? And if they are doing this, maybe I want to travel more, or maybe I want to just be home with the kids more often. Like, what does it look like for you?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's freedom looks different for everyone, right? But
Mhm.
it's a case of like, you need to be expanded into it being possible for you. And that's kind of like the goal for me through my business is, yeah, I have a freedom model method. If you want to buy into that, great. But actually my goal actually is more so to expand people into what's possible for them through the
Yeah.
things that I'm talking about.
Amazing. Okay, so now that you're like you are the digital nomad now, which I think is just so much fun and so exciting. But what does that look like for your business while you're traveling and you're working full time? How does that, well, not, I guess not really full time because you can plan that out. But like what does that look like for you, and how do you keep yourself grounded in the terms of like when I travel, I just want to be like, "Ugh, I don't want to work. I just want to like enjoy all of this." So how do you balance both of those?
Yeah. So obviously for the first year that I was a nomad, I was living in Bali. Like, I had a base. I did move around a little bit in Bali, but in general, I had a group of friends. I had the places that I like to go and work. I knew where I was getting the Wi-Fi from. Like, it felt very easy. I set myself up very nicely there. So that felt more like I was an expat living in Bali. So when it comes to working, it was like going about your daily life. And like I said, I tried to translate my London life into Bali life, which didn't quite work out for me. But there's obviously a lot of distractions. And what I always say about digital nomad life is that you're kind of always in survival mode, because if you're moving around a lot, which I then did in year 2 and 3 of my nomad life, you're constantly in survival mode because you constantly need to find somewhere to live. You constantly need to make friends. You're constantly trying to figure out where you're going to go and work, what you're going to eat, and do all of the basic things that anybody living in one place would not need to do on that regular of a basis.
Mhm.
So when I left Bali, and actually would say that's when my nomad journey began, when I started traveling, which was at the end of 2022, I then, for the period of 2 years, right up until the end of last year, I was just traveling. Like, I didn't spend more than about 3 or 4 weeks anywhere, which honestly is exhausting. And unless you have a business that's already established and set up, it's not possible. Honestly, you can't build and travel in that way. At the end of last year, I decided to completely pivot my business. My business had been established for 4 years at that point, and I was like, okay, like, I feel like I've exhausted all the things that I can do with this business. I'm going to pivot into a new direction, which is when I started helping people basically go through the same transitions that I've gone through. And when I decided to do that, I was like, I need some more stability. So that's when my nomad has turned into slow mad, and I'm now living in Thailand. So I think if you already have a job, you already have an established business, it's very much possible to live the nomad life because you've already got those things established. What I've seen to be true for myself and for other people is if you're trying to build something new, it is next to impossible to do that whilst you're in that survival mode and going around. And don't get me wrong, it's the best thing. I would never, ever, ever change that. Like, it was so much fun. But whilst I'm in this rebuild phase of my business, I wouldn't be able to move around constantly. And even when you're in this one place, like I say, I've got a beach 4 minutes away from me. I have multiple coffee shops. I've got a massive group of friends. I run events here. Like, there's on Koh Phangan where I live, there's literally an event every 5 minutes you could go and explore if you wanted to, in wellness, spiritual stuff, business stuff, whatever you want to do. Basically, it's like an adult playground. So there's so many distractions. So I think it's really about like honing in on, again, how do you want to live your life? How do you want to show up for yourself every day? And prioritizing. So I think I've really had to learn my priorities in the past few years and know exactly what it is that I like. And I think you go through phases of kind of experimenting with those things. And now I feel like I've done the experimentation and I'm kind of settled in a routine, and creating routines everywhere I go is obviously really helpful. So I think, yeah, I agree with you. There's lots of distractions when you're traveling, but I think it's just like remembering that you can't actually travel unless you do the work. So you
Yeah.
kind of have to prioritize it.
Okay, so another question is like I know you've said that you've gone from like London time business to traveling and enjoying the slow mad life now. But like I do feel like that hustle culture is kind of ingrained in who we are and how we operate. And so I'd love to hear, how did you like unlearn some of that aspect of it? Like how did you learn to slow down? Because you obviously were, when you transferred to like an island life, you were like, okay, this is not working for me. But if it's so ingrained and built in, it's really hard to get rid of that go, 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 we got to get this done kind of mindset. So how did you really unlearn that to create this new version of success for yourself?
I think it's a process. I think I'm still unlearning much of it, because there's still an element of guilt when I take time off or I'm not working that I still feel. However, what I do know to be true is that my health comes before everything, like my mental and my physical health. And because of hustle culture, because of the cortisol levels rising and chronic stress over a long period of time, I am now seeing the impact in my physical health. I saw it in my mental health at the time, but I've been able to overcome quite a lot of the mental health challenges. I'm now seeing it in my physical health. So, for example, I have a quite severe histamine intolerance, and that has kind of come from having chronic stress for a long period of time, where my gut microbiome is no longer really functioning. So I've had to do massive detoxes and overhaul my whole physical health, basically, to be able to function and get my nervous system back to like a normal point for me to be able to function in my business. And I think when you start noticing the challenges that you face within your health because of the hustle culture, that's when you start taking it pretty seriously. So I force myself to take time off. I'm like, I give myself permission, and it's a massive mindset shift. Honestly, I think you have to do a hell of a lot of self-development work, a hell of a lot of limiting belief work, inner child work, and reprogramming to be able to get you to a point of unlearning hustle culture. And I don't think I'll ever fully unlearn it. There's still an element of me that still believes that I have to work hard, but I am trying to shift that mindset. And the other approach that I'm adopting is flow, don't force. Like, if something feels really hard, don't do it. It's not meant for you. So I'm trying to just go with the flow and allow myself to feel into things and use my intuition way more. And then I think that allows me to unlearn everything that hustle culture told me, because hustle culture is basically forcing, like bouldering your way through something, right? And just trying to get
Yeah.
to the end result as quickly as possible. I'm trying to just keep reminding myself, like, everything's just going to happen in the right time. Like, I don't have to force this to happen. If it's meant to happen, it will happen. And honestly, I've proven that to myself to be true so many times over and over again that I really trust that statement now. So I think it is just a case of like mindset work, trusting your intuition, and allowing yourself the time off, because I think hustle culture trains us to work hard and look at rest as a reward. Rest is not a reward, rest is essential. So if we don't rest, we burn out. So now I know that, and I've seen the cycle so many times, and I've lived through it way too many times. I'm super, super mindful of that and super, super conscious of it. So I won't allow it to happen to myself again.
I think that's the key. And I think sometimes we have to go through burnout to be able to see that. But I do same thing right now where I can see where like the patterns are, and you start to recognize it. It's a lot of mindset work and just like telling yourself it's okay. Like I have a very hard time with just like sitting and not working and not doing, even just doing something. I can't just like sit very well. And so I love the fact that you give yourself permission to just relax and enjoy. And it's okay if you're not in the office every single minute of every single day, or like I have two little ones, so it's okay if I'm not like running around with them all the time, even if that's something that I absolutely love. But I just think we need to just be more gentle with ourselves. And you're right, recognizing the patterns, seeing where we are with our health, really paying attention to that. And for me, like my energy is key. I need to make sure that my energy is top notch. And if it's starting to dip, why is it dipping? And let's recognize it before it gets too far.
Yeah, exactly. The
Yeah.
self-awareness part is the start of all of it, right? You have to be aware of these things. If you're not aware of them, then you're just going to let it spiral out of control. So it's already good to that you're starting to acknowledge it and catch it, and then you can actually make a change from it.
Okay, I'd love for you to give us one last piece of advice on like what is something that someone listening to could take away with them if they're craving more alignment, more ease, and less hustle in how they build their business.
I think it's about, like you said earlier, like getting really clear on how you want to live your life, because you need that clarity in order to make any changes. You can make changes, but then they're probably not going to fit if you've made them out of like, oh, she's doing that. Maybe I could go and do this. Or, oh, like maybe I could just test the waters on this thing. Yeah, you can, but you're probably just going to go through these trial and error process for a long period of time. If you get really clear on exactly what it is that you want to do or how you want to live your life, and there's so many exercises you can do to try and figure that out, I think then you can build a plan and make those shifts pretty quickly and pretty easily because you've got the clarity. I think the clarity piece and like that awareness part is the beginning of every journey, really. You need the awareness and the clarity. It's like if you were setting out, I don't know, on a road trip, you're probably going to look at where you're going before you get on the road, right? You're probably going to look at the
Yeah.
directions. So you've got a route that you're going to take. It's the same in life. Like if you want to figure out like how to get somewhere, you need to figure out where you're going. So I think getting that clarity is probably the first step that I would take or suggest someone to take if they do want to create a more freedom-filled life or a life that feels more aligned to them.
Amazing. Okay, and then one last question. Where can people find you and what do you have coming up that they can check out?
Yeah, so people can find me at It's Sophie Biggerstaff on Instagram. And my website is at itsophiebiggerstaff.com. And then I also have a podcast. It's called The Remote CEO Life. And we drop episodes every week, very similar to this. Like we chat about all things business, freedom, entrepreneurship. And then the offer that I have at the moment is my Freedom Model Method. So basically, there's three options. It's a course only, group coaching plus course, or one-on-one plus the group coaching and the course, depending on what level of support you need. But essentially, it walks people through everything that we've spoken about today, like figuring out that clarity piece on what lifestyle it is that they want to achieve, and then basically the alignment and the action to try and get them closer to it. So that's how you can find me.
Amazing. Okay, this conversation was just so good. I think it's what you're doing and you're traveling and like even your story of how you've got there is just really incredible. And I think the discussion for sure on the burnout, the overwhelm, the health, like looking at all of those things is so top priority for an entrepreneur, whether they realize it now or they'll realize it in the future. But if they can listen to this and even think about the precautions they can take in advance to take care of themselves, I think this conversation was just so incredible. So I really, really appreciate you being here and having this conversation with us. And yeah, I just love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I just absolutely love this conversation because it really like it went beyond my expectations. Like I just really loved talking about how can we build this business that creates this freedom for us, this life that we really want, that business by design, so that we get to enjoy more parts of life. Life is way too short to be stressed out, hustling all the time and like working 9 to 5. We should be able to enjoy time with our family, to be able to travel, to do all these things. And so I just really, really love this conversation because it really does challenge the hustle culture and what is success. So I really want to go back to the topic of burnout. We talked a lot about burnout. She's experienced it. I've experienced it. So many entrepreneurs are experiencing it. And if we can take precautions before, like really recognizing what is causing us to burn out, because as Sophie said, she's burned out multiple times, as have I. And maybe we just are like, oh, it's fine. I'll just rest a little bit and then I'll get better. It's not until we really feel like completely low energy and we can't even like function anymore that we start to notice. And we shouldn't be like that. We should start seeing that these things are happening in advance. So if you're in burnout, please take some of these tips. And if you're not quite there yet, also take some of these tips and start to realize that this is always something that could happen to you, and we really don't want it to happen to you. So just like take precautions, put your energy first, think about what you want out of life and what type of life, but also what is successful to you. So I want to go back on that, like what is success and redefining that on our own terms also, because if we are thinking, okay, we have to hustle, like she was working in this crazy industry that had a lot of high expectations, a lot of hours she was putting in, not even being treated very nicely sometimes by some of the people she was working with. And so I just want you to like look at that and be like, well, is that successful? Is that what you deem as successful? Is climbing the corporate ladder? Like, look at what you think is success is. For me, it's being able to be around my family. It's being able to drive them to school and pick them up. It's being able to travel way more. It's being able to work from the lake. It's being able to like just live and have moments on my deck looking at the water and being like, oh, this is amazing. And not feeling that pressure to have to get back into the office all the time or to be at home in my actual office. So what does success look like for you? It could be traveling the world and getting to see way more of what there is out there for us. I also really want to go back to talking about like the business that we create is created to support us. We don't need to be like hustling all the time. We're going to go back to the hustle culture because I feel like that is so prominent in this discussion. But if we really want like a life that is built for us by our design to support the way we want to live, then I love her method of like thinking, okay, let's get clarity on what it is that we want. Do we want to travel? How does my business support that? How can we make my business support that if it doesn't right now? And then make sure we're always in alignment. This is really, really key. And I'm really glad this is part of her method because sometimes I don't think this gets talked about a lot when we take like courses and stuff and people are like, oh, this is the steps I took and this is what you need to take and this is how you're going to get there. We sometimes get fooled into like, well, it worked for them. It should work for me. But if we don't, like, if we're not in alignment with loving what that is and being like fully invested in whatever product or service we're offering, we're going to like get bored of it and we're going to want to like shift and change and really thinking about what you love to talk about. If I could talk about something for hours and hours and hours, that is a huge key point that it's like, yes, this is what you need to be doing because clearly you cannot stop talking about it. It's your favorite thing in the world, right? Like, so if we can do that, we can talk forever, like on podcasts. We can talk on our social media channels. It makes it so much easier to market your business when you just love everything. You can talk forever about it. And I think the big key takeaway from this is you can build an incredible business for yourself with a lot of freedom and a lot of success on your terms. But we also need to really take care of our mental health. So thinking about the burnout aspect, thinking about what makes us happy, thinking about building that aspect into our businesses is really essential because if we're just thinking straight business and not taking care of ourselves, then we do dip into that burnout and that overwhelm and that exhaustion phase. And that can take you out. It can take you out from actually being able to get your work done. Like Sophie said, she had to take time off work to just get herself well. And is our businesses even designed for that? Like, thank goodness my business is designed to keep functioning even when I have days where I need to take days or weeks where I need to step away or when things happen in our lives that we aren't able to be in the office and it's unplanned, we need to make sure that our businesses are set up for that. So I just love this discussion of like, yeah, grow the business you want, be able to travel, be a digital nomad, have that freedom you want, create that alignment you want. But let's also prepare to make sure that we're safeguarded, to make sure that we're protected, to make sure that our energy is protected. And that's what truly makes your life and your business by design, but also such an incredible life to live is when we do things like that for ourselves. Thank you for listening to the Bold Entrepreneur Podcast. If today's conversation hit home, share it with your business bestie. Tag us at Jen Kinnell and it's Sophie Biggerstaff on Instagram and let us know what resonated with you the most. We would love to hear what your key takeaway was and share it with our audience as well. Until next time, keep building boldly and build the life of your dreams on your terms.